I have always dreamt of getting 2300 rating. Now, either if that is online or over the board, 2300 has always been a rating that I've wanted to get. And I have played online chess almost every single day for the past 5 years, and I have never been able to do that until yesterday. Yesterday, I hit 2300 in Blitz rating on chess.com for the very first time, and this was a huge milestone for me just because I've worked so hard to get it these past few years and I've never gotten it. So I wanted to share this achievement with you because I'm really happy and show you exactly how I got it, show you the games that led to me getting 2300 because I'm just so incredibly happy that I finally got it. It doesn't really feel real, and I'll be honest with you and say that right now I may have lost it. I'm like 20 to 80, but doesn't matter. I hit it yesterday and I'm incredibly proud. Let me show you how I got 2300. It started with me getting 2289, which was already a very high rating. And the reason I had this rating was because I had an amazing titled Tuesday a few days earlier. And so I had reached my peak, which was then 2283. So I had 2284 and I was playing against Ibrahimi, 2009. I suppose he was born in 2009. And he went d4, I went d5, bishop f4. This was a London, which I replied with my favorite way of facing the London with, which is c5, because it's such an active way of playing. I played e6 and c3. This is all very common, trying to stabilize this little d4 pawn. I just brought out my pieces, nothing crazy, and I went queen b6, which is very thematic because I'm threatening this pawn on b2. So my opponent went b3, I went bishop d7, and I'll be honest with you, the quality of these games is not immense because all of these games are 3+0, which means that we have 3 minutes with no increment per move. So I was just playing really fast, and so was my opponent. I played rook c8, I got out my bishop, and now my opponent took on c5. So I decided to capture back with the bishop. He played e4. This is very common to try to take here and then play e4 to open up the whole center, especially before I have castled. I took, and then I went knight e7. Now, this move was actually a horrible move because I trapped my own bishop. Here, my opponent can go b4 and win the game, but my opponent missed it when knight e5. I went bishop b5, threatening the rook, hoping now that my opponent would go c4 because then the threat of b4 would be gone forever. And now after c4, I mean, things were looking very dim. I went bishop c6, he took, and now he had the opportunity of playing queen d7 check, and I mean, things here are starting to turn horribly, but my opponent went knight d7, giving me a lot of hope because he was just simply threatening my queen. And after I moved my queen, what does the knight do here? I mean, if he wants to take, that's what I thought he was gonna do. Take, and then bring the bishop in. Well, I don't have a good position, but I'm surviving. But instead, he went back and just gave me a whole move for free, basically, and I was able to castle. And now I'm not doing so bad anymore because I'm able to bring in my rooks. And yeah, I'm not down any material, so it's really not such a bad position. He started to play really slowly. He went a3, trying to fork me. I went rook d8. He played queen h5. Now things are once again starting to look pretty bad. He's threatening to take on f7. I have to go g6. And yeah, here if he goes something like queen g5, it's very hard for me because once again, there's so many threats with my bishop. My knight is kind of hanging. But he played queen h4. And I played bishop d4 here, threatening the rook and threatening this knight. So here he can take my knight, which I believe is what he did. But actually his best move is to just simply go queen f6, threatening here on f7. And now it's just after, yeah, it's gonna be really hard after something like this. But we have little time. He took on e7. I took his knight. He played b4, threatening my queen, but now I have queen c7, defending the bishop. And now, if he trades, well, then I'll just take back. He went bishop g5, and now I was able to trade off the queens, take the rook, we traded everything, and I entered this endgame where I have a super active rook. So I started playing e5, and I just wanted to activate my rook and then bring my king up. So I went g5. I think I was going a little bit crazy here with all my pawns, but I was just getting really excited. Because all of a sudden my e5 pawn was very weak. So I played e4 with the idea that after takes, I can go for this move f4, and at least I can put this king kind of in jail. So I'm bringing back that king. Now he has this strong e pawn, but my king is able to stop it. So I was just trying to get some other pawns. Now I had to bring in the king. And yeah, here I started getting really worried about the fact that these pawns were gonna fall. But I pushed up my pawn to g4, and my opponent took the bait, taking my pawn on h5, and after g3, it's going to be a forced checkmate. And here my opponent resigned. You know, was this a high quality game? There were many ups and downs, but I ended up winning this game and I was very happy. So now my rating was 2284 and everything I wanted to do was to get 2 more wins. So we started with the next game, which was against Fari Mandiri. Here I had the white pieces and I went d4 like I always do, and it became a queen's gambit declined. I went for the exchange variation, which is when you capture this pawn in center, and then I brought out my bishop to pin this knight. So all of this are theoretical moves: castles, bishop d3, bishop e6, knight f3, rook e8. Wait, let me just deactivate these arrows. Okay, there we go. I castled, and then he went b6. So here I decided to just bring up my knight. I thought this was a beautiful square for my knight. And now my opponent went c5. And I felt like things were getting very loose over here. So I played bishop b5, threatening the rook. The rook went back. And then I played f4, kind of threatening to go f5. My opponent went a6. And I went bishop e2 here. Now, yeah, I don't think that bishop e2 is a horrible move, but there may have been better moves in this position, such as maybe going something like bishop c6. But I went bishop e2. My opponent played c4. I went f5, threatening the bishop. And after the bishop goes back, I played bishop f3, but this is not such a good move because I can actually go for bishop takes f6. And after bishop takes, I have this beautiful move, knight takes d5. And if the queen takes, I can go bishop f3 and I'm winning material. And I didn't see this. That would have been a brilliant move. Instead, I went bishop f3 with the same threat of taking and then taking here. But now it allows time for my opponent to go bishop b7, defending. I went queen e1 because I wanted to get my queen up here to g3. But now I went queen g3, and this is a horrible move because my opponent can go knight e4, which would just be really strong because it's threatening my queen and it's threatening my bishop. Yeah, so here my opponent didn't see it. Fortunately, he went b4. Once again, he had that opportunity, but missed it. And after this move, I finally took this knight that was just so annoying because my bishop was also just being very weak over here. And I went knight c5, and this is now a really good square for my knight. My opponent went knight a5, defending the bishop. And now I went knight g4, which is the best move here, threatening to go knight takes h6 check because this pawn is pinned. So my opponent went bishop h4, threatening the queen. And here I was trying to calculate what happens if I take, but I couldn't really figure out what was the best continuation. Apparently this is the best continuation for some reason. And now go queen h3. I didn't see this during the game, so I just went queen h3 immediately. My opponent played bishop c5, and now I went to g3, threatening the bishop. Yeah, here I had bishop d5. There's lots of tactics in this position. I went f6. I started like catapulting all my pieces towards the king. My opponent traded off here. And now bishop takes f6. So I found this move knight d7, threatening the bishop, threatening the rook. And now pretty much my opponent has to keep the bishop and move it and sacrifice the rook, because if my opponent goes something like this, I'll just simply take here. And after takes and queen takes h6, this king is getting checkmated. So my opponent went bishop g5. I won the exchange. I was very happy. And now I found this beautiful move, bishop e6, which I was very proud of, pinning this pawn. And the idea is that you cannot take this because the queen is hanging. And if you take, well, yeah, and I'm threatening both this pawn and this one. So my opponent took this pawn. I went bishop takes f7. The king moved. I captured the other pawn. And now we started kind of re-maneuvering our pieces a little bit. I went bishop g6, which was a horrible move because, well, I was going to say I only had a few seconds on the clock. I didn't. There's no excuse. I literally just missed queen c6 check, but luckily my opponent missed it too. My opponent went rook d8. I went queen e6, now stopping any nasty threats. My opponent went bishop b2. I went rook e8, rook e1, threatening to go queen e8 check because now this king cannot move. And my opponent now did the blunder, the big blunder, rook g8. And now it's going to be a forced checkmate in 3 moves. After I take the rook, my opponent takes it, and bam, rook e8, checkmate. Well, okay, the queen can go here, but checkmate. So after this game, I gained a lot of points, and I was like 2290 something, but I had to win one more game to get 2300. And that game ended up being this one. I was playing against International Master Airless Far from Denmark, and I had to win this game to get 2300 rating for the very first time in my life. So my opponent started with the move e4. I was feeling the nerves here. I went c5. I played the Sicilian. This became an Alapin. And after takes, I simply went e6, defending my knight. These are all pretty standard moves in the Alapin. d6 to try to eliminate white center. Bishop e2, castles, knight c6. Bishop g5, threatening the queen. I went back with the bishop. Takes. Now I'm playing against this isolated pawn. These two knights are really strong in front of the pawn because they're stopping this pawn from ever advancing. So my opponent went knight c3. I went b6 to get my bishop up to this diagonal. Yeah, my opponent is playing right the way he should as well, just trying to control the square as much as possible. And now I went f6, which is maybe not such a good move. The coach in chess.com is telling me, Anna, pawns can't move backwards, which I know, but I thought it was a good move because I really didn't like that knight over there, but it's weakening this pawn, I suppose. So queen d7, rook e1, I activated my rooks. Now I went knight f4. Yeah, I'm not sure if I had a better move here. Actually, maybe... Yeah, I'm trying to think if I have... Maybe I could simply have taken on c3. I'm not sure. But I ended up going knight f4. The idea being that I wanted to threaten the queen and defend this pawn. So my opponent went queen e3. I defended this knight. And now, you know, we got a trade of bishops. And my opponent went queen g3. Now, things are starting to get a little bit exciting over here because I was threatening checkmate. But my opponent also has a few threats maybe at some point of doing something like this. So I went h5, eliminating this knight, but more importantly, I wanted to be able to push this queen away. Because where does the queen go? The queen doesn't have a lot of squares to go to where you can still kind of defend this pawn. So my opponent went queen f3, and I just thought, okay, I'll double up your pawns and be very happy. And now I went knight h3 check, and then I got my other knight up as well over here. So my opponent went knight g2, and I simply went g5. I was trying to reinforce this knight as much as possible. Now, when this knight moved, I was able to bring up my rook to the second rank, and I just started feeling like, wait, Anna, you have a fantastic position. So we traded knights. I started getting greedy, and I started capturing pawns, and I just thought, okay, as long as my rook is on f8, this knight cannot capture this pawn, and there's nothing bad that can happen to me. So I was just capturing pawns. My opponent now started moving this knight around. I went knight d3, threatening the rook and threatening the pawn. Rook e2. Here, actually, I'm just winning on the spot after rook a1 check. I didn't see it during the game, but this just wins on the spot because it's a checkmate. But you're going to get a little deja vu from that position. I went check, my opponent went here, I went back with the knight. I started pushing the a pawn. Now this knight got to the other side of the board because it started getting scared of this pawn. I activated my rook, and now after rook c1 check, king g2, my opponent went to the wrong way. I mean, king e2 is going to be losing as well, but my opponent went king g2, and I went knight f4 checkmate. And with this checkmate, I ended up not just winning this game against an international master, but I ended up getting 2300 rating for the very first time on chess.com. And this was huge for me. I was so incredibly happy. It felt absolutely amazing to get 2300, and in fact, I got so motivated that I want to try to get 2400 in November, which I know is going to be super difficult, but it would just be so cool to do that, and I really think I can. So yeah, wish me luck with me getting 2400, and let me know what your peak chess rating is in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you all in the next one.